And we're live.
Hi, hello, and I'm Helen Beeken, and I'm up here at the SAA headquarters in Newark, and I've been invited to share with you one of my techniques with watercolour. I paint sport paintings, and this time I've chosen a underwater scene of someone swimming, which I drew off the television during Rio. Here's my sketchbook, very rough drawing, but I took that and I've drawn it up onto the same size cheap paper, and I've tidied it up. I've worked out where I'm going to put my darker washes, and I redrew her nose because it looked like a little bit of a pig on that one. And I took it to transfer it. I took a large lump of graphite stick and I rubbed the back. Then I take a harder pencil, which is an HB, and it's got HB written on the end if you look here, and just transferred it, not pressing too hard. I don't want a ridge in the watercolour paper, and it just transfers quite gently onto your paper. I can then spend a couple of minutes just tidying it up with a softer pencil, or I'll take her legs off the page because you've paid for that piece of paper at the end, so we'll go right off the end. There, just tidy up, and just tidy up her fingers, just checking that I'm happy with the way I've drawn it. So I'm then going to mask it out. So you can see what I'm going to do with the masking fluid. I'm using a blue coloured masking fluid. And here we go. I'm going to put it on a flat surface, and we can add a bit more if we need it. And using the cling film, which you might have in your kitchen, I'm going to transfer it. And this will give a little wrinkly effect that you can't get with your brushes. And note that I'm not using a brush at the moment. Right, here we go. This is when we're going to make a real mess. And I'm going to just lightly, tippy-toe on there. Just lightly. I don't want it stompy. And I'm just putting it a little bit down there. Can you see how that makes a mark that's just impossible to get with a brush? And I'm just, oh, this is addictive. I'm going to get rid of this, so I don't want it anywhere near any brushes or water that I'm going to use with my paint. And now I'm going to use one of these shapers. It's sold as a shaper for pastels, and I'm just going to put it wherever my little notebook tells me where I need white. Now, if you're new to masking fluid, the principle is wherever you plonk the masking fluid, it leaves it white paper. So when you flood it with colour, it doesn't take it up. So I'm now just filling in all the what I regard as the highlights, where the light is catching her face. I've made her look a little bit more 1930s, and there's a little bit there on her shoulder. I'm not putting it on too thickly because it'll take forever to dry. And I'm just going to do her fingers and the top of her back of her hand. Now you can just smear that on. You don't have to put masking fluid on heavily, because it ends up being really clunky. I'm just using the rubbery thing, the shaper, as a squeegee virtually, and it's so light. A light touch with watercolour is what you need. And I'm going to put a little bit on the thigh. If you're uncertain about your control of watercolour, you might want to put a little bit more on, but I'm going to be using the water to carry the paint on, so I can leave some bits totally dry and the watercolour won't flood that area. Now, this is the fun bit. I'm going to make some bubbles, and I'm going to use the tubes that come off your new paintbrush. Now I know that you've all got these in the bottom of your boxes and you've left them there and you don't know what to do with them. So I'm going to take my tubes, dipping it in. This is why we've got a flat surface, because if you dip it in too deep, you'll get too much on, and we're just laying it on. You don't get a perfect circle, you get a very suggestive circle, and we can put, how many bubbles can we put on? I'm going to put them there and one in front of her, and also I'm going to use the end of a paintbrush and just stop. I told you it's addictive. You can go to town with the little bubbles. Some out of her mouth and some around her hand. Now, if you're not sure how your drawing of your hand is going, you can cheat by taking another bit of masking fluid. And you can put a little splash around her hand to hide any fingers that you haven't counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I've got 5 fingers, but we'll put some more bubbles around there. And you can make a few little bigger bubbles and a little round. Oh, yeah. See, I told you it's addictive. We can put a few up there. Then this will need to be totally dry. Totally dry. Masking fluid and dampness does not mix. So we leave that to dry. So I'm going to put this to one side, and I've got one that I've done in the white masking fluid, so you can see the washes of the colour, because this is being blue, it's not going to show up. Now when I do the washes, I'm going to use indigo blue. Indigo blue, very sexy, very intense, and it has a great range of dilution. You might be familiar with your blues. You've got your French ultramarine, you've got your cerulean blue, which is your foreign holiday skies. This is your cobalt blue, which is your English skies, and this is the indigo blue. It's got a black accent, although there's no black pigment in there. It's intense, it's darker, it does stop the light coming through. It's a natural ingredient. It's made from the leaves of the plant and is grown in tropical countries. There. Now this is the picture with your white masking fluid. I'm going to put the lid on that because I'm going to make sure that everything to do with the masking fluid is right out of reach of any paintbrush or water. If I was to mix, to wash off my stick into the water, you ought to have little tiny bits of latex floating in your water, and it will collect onto your nice new brushes and you ruin them. So we don't want that. And I've masked out the paper, which is a Winsor & Newton £140. And when you're wetting your brush, it will cockle. Wet your paper, it will cockle. The tape round your paper is there to hold it in tension, because when you stretch, you're not actually stretching, you're shrinking paper. So we don't want that. So always put your tape all the way around. Now I'm going to start off by doing the most intense area, which is her swimming costume. And I'm damping it. I'm not flooding it too much. I'm using this nice new brush. Don't get worried that when you put your paint on your brush that it colours your bristles, because it will stain them, but that's the joy of indigo. It's a very intense colour. The pigment is one of the first natural light fast pigments produced. You might be familiar with indigo as the colour of your jeans. All right, I put that on the palette there, and can you see how it dilutes? It's lovely, isn't it? Right, I'm going to make it stronger, put more pigment on my brush. The water's held in the centre of the brush there, that's why it's a nut shape. It's called a filbert, and we've just given a hard edge. Can you see how that's spreading? It gives you a nice even line. Those of you that do watercolour and you get those little streaky marks that you don't like, it's because you need to damp the paper first so your watercolour covers the area. You can see, isn't that lovely? It's a lovely colour. This reminds me of school uniform swimming costumes down in Folkestone on a freezing May morning. Whoop, she's put on weight now. I've just made her a bit fatter in the waist, but I don't think she'll mind. Right, there we go. The joy of working from a sketch is the fact that you only draw down and you've only got in front of you the bare information that you need. Can you see how the masking fluid is resisting the paint? There we go, there's a little bit there. Ooh, nice. And now I'm going to put it round the back of her neck and over her goggles. I'm going to do something strange. It does sound strange, but I'm going to wash it over where I've put the masking fluid. I don't know whether it shows up, but can you see where it's resisting? But I'm just touching the paper, which is dry, on the top edge. And you can see where it's resisting, and I'm going, that would give me a neat little line, whoops, round her face where the shadows are forming. I'm leaving that to dry. Right. Now, this is a good bit. This is where we're going to encourage accidental loveliness. So, there we are. This is just water. I'm not flooding it. Can you see it's beginning to cockle? And that's because it's shrinking against the tension of the masking tape. Right, I'm just being careful where I lay my water. I want it dark down here. If you take too long, this is going to start to dry, but we can always add a little bit more water later. Right, I'm going to take a load. I've added some more water to my brush and I'm loading it. And can you see how that will flood? Let the water carry your paint. You have to trust in it, like a sat-nav. You have to just go with it. Can you see how that is just running? I might have to flatten the board a little bit in a moment. Right, I'm adding a little bit of colour here, adding more pigment to the water and just letting it flow. Now these arms are dry, so when I put the paint on there, can you see it's not running into the arms? If that was flat, it would be easier. There we go. Can you see how the paper is just dry, so it doesn't suck the colour towards it? And we'll do that round there. Now, if I feel that that's too dark, take the toilet paper, and I prefer toilet paper to kitchen paper because it's more absorbent and it doesn't leave a texture like some kitchen papers have embossed patterns on, if you're posh. Right. Now the water being dilute is just giving different tones to the paint. It does make lovely pictures. Can you see how I'm going over that hand? And just a little tint. Can you see the indigo dilutes beautifully? You wouldn't know that that's not more than one blue used there. Up to there, I'm just going to let that run. And now I'm going to use the tissue. I can wipe it off. It's quite movable. It stains beautifully. And I'm just letting things happen. And I'm just darting from one side to the other. There we go. I can add a little bit of salt, and that'll give a sparkle it's soaking up the pigment colour. It's darker here. That's a shadow of her thighs there. And I can give a light wash here. There we go, that goes in there. Where else should I put it? I can put it here. This is the power that you have. You can play God when you're doing watercolour. Right, let's put a little colour down here. It's getting very blue, isn't it? I've got a hard edge there, so I'm going to scrub that. That's why I like nylon bristles, because you can just get in there using the tip. A lot of mistakes that people who are not used to watercolour make is using the brush too hard, and you press in and you'll get a mark from the ferrule. That's the ferrule there, and you'll scratch the paper. But all I'm doing is using the tip of my brush and a little bit of there, and now I've got a shadow here, lifting it from there. It's under the chin there where the shadow is. There we go. And I'm going to put a little darker bit on the tip of my brush, and I'm just going to let it run so it's darker than behind her, so she's against a lighter background. And I'm pressing just lightly, I'm not thumping that down, a light touch. If only I could teach you one thing, and that would be just to use your brush lightly. Let's soften that down there. Let's move that out of the way. That's it. There. It's almost ready to dry. Now you must, and I can't emphasize this enough, leave it to dry. Go make a cup of tea, bake a cake, go watch Strictly, but just leave it to dry. Because if you start to try and rub it off when it's damp, you'll tear the paper. Water and masking fluid don't mix. This is where I've just a bit more dark there, and a bit there. And when it's dry, I can come back and I can add a little bit more. There we go. Don't tell anybody you can do this. They're not going to have me back because I'm going to make a mess. Do a little bit splashy. Where it's darker, I'll see if I can get that salt to work. I'm going to put, the salt soaks up the pigment and it will make it lighter. So it gives you another variant of the tones that you're going to have there. And the salt will fall off. If it doesn't fall off, when it's totally dry, you can just knock it off. Can't use it on the chips though afterwards. Let's put a little bit of dark shadow down there just to anchor the picture. Every time you do one of these washes, they come out differently. Right, I think, yeah, let me leave it, and I'm going to dry it with a hairdryer. You've got to remember not to overcook it with the hairdryer, because the masking fluid will go into like chewing gum if you're not too careful. I'm just going to, I told you it's addictive. You just see another little bit and another little bit. Right, now I'm going to hairdry it. There's going to be a bit of a noise, but I hope you can hear me. And I hope you're going to use indigo. Just try it out. It's got a wonderful history. It paid for the Civil War in America when they sold it to the French to raise money. And it was grown on the plantations down there. It gives you a lovely silhouette without it being black. And it can mix up beautiful mauves if you put Easel and crimson into it. And it makes a really rich, deep green if you mix it with some different yellows. It's not one that you get in your sets, so you might have to buy it individually. So this is going to take a bit of time, because I must make sure that it's dry. So I think we're going to go for a break. Okay, thank you.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, The SAA, Society for All Artists, is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles, and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
Best thing about being a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I could shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
Oh, hello. Yes, I'm still drying my hair. Right, okay. The big reveal now. Yeah, this, fingers crossed it's going to be totally dry. Right, now, the salt first. Keep removing this tape. It's come off the side, so it's not under tension. But there we go. Can you hear the salt coming off? Ooh, that's rather nice. Right, here we go. When you're rubbing the masking fluid off, don't press too hard. The lighter you press, the more easier it will come off. Can you see? There we are, that's coming off. And it might be more obvious on... This is when you work up your upper arm muscles. Right, there we go. There. Oh, and now her face. Now, try not to smudge it. There we go, that's dry. If it was being damp, you just smear the paint, tear the paper, you go home crying. Right, now, that's all but finished. But what I'm going to do is try and get that to stick down. Take a soft pencil. This is a 4B, very soft pencil. And my style of drawing is the fact that you can see the pencil line. And I'm just re-establishing any little bits that I feel need to be reinforced, because you can lose the sense of the arm. When you're looking at swimmers underwater, they tend to be refracted. You don't see them as natural perspective. So don't be surprised if you're saying, oh, that doesn't look like a proper arm. But I'm going to put her hand here. So I've lost her hand a little bit with the masking fluid. And just, this is where your practice of drawing comes in handy. I like the fact that there's a pencil line on this. But when I say pencil line, it's not a harsh line, it's a soft line. You could use one of these, but they're not so precise, and it gives you this kind of scratchy, soft line. But you might have more control using the soft drawing pencil. Right, I'm going to take a smaller brush, and I've just wiped it on my clothes, which I said I wouldn't do. And I'm just going to darken up as it's dry on the thumb here. And maybe just a little bit of a wash underneath the hand, because the hand is kind of hidden. Oh, I found a bit more. You always find another bit. You've got a nice big lump there, so you can actually just mark it, knock it back so it's not so white. And I'm just looking at where, or you can just be picky, and I'm just going to add a little bit more. I'm just wetting the paper, and then if I add to where I've wet, there we go. Just don't darken it up. Just put a little bit more here, I think, to make it a little, so we've got a bit of a balance. Now, I'm taking the toilet paper, taking a damp brush, and I've taken the smaller of my brushes. And you see little bubbles that were made by the tube off the paintbrush. I'm just going to put my brush in there, and I'm going to blot. Bing! That comes out of there. And it gives you a not so white bubble, but it also gives you a sense of depth. So they're not just in the circle. I'm just taking the colour out of in there. And I think, I can't resist, I'm going to have to do another one. Another little drops here. And I can just add a little bit of water to them. That would give me a sense of movement. What I can also do, this is dry, taking a vinyl rubber, and I'm just going to rub it across. And it just takes the layer out, and you get those ringlets of water coming through. And it takes a tone out, and it just breaks anything up. And I can just blot that. And then I think we'll put a little darken it up here. Just play around with it. The world is your lobster when it comes to water. Just let the colour do it. You just need to trust in the water to take it. I like the fact that she's coming, it's darker this end, and it's going lighter up at the top. And you can just blot it. I'm taking it off and taking it on. And you can play around to how dark that you want it. And I think that's pretty much there. We can always put another hole. You can go to town. Just put your fingers on it, and that'll knock it back. And then I think if I show you what it looks like with a mound, tidy it all up. There you go. There. A semi-1930s style swimmer underwater. I hope you have a go at that. It's simple. You can always use your own photograph. It doesn't have to be a swimmer. You might have a footballer or anything, something that you really are passionate about. Thank you for watching.
Hi, I'm Vic Bearcroft. I've created my half of the postcard, and now I'm going to pass it on to my painting partner.
What have you got for me, Vic? Half a skull. What are you trying to say to me, Vic? Are you calling me an old fossil? Okay, let's see what we can do with it.